And I think I've got it right here, and I want to share it with you because a couple of lines in here that I think are very germane in the article. I highlighted it. Next week, so he goes in and he says, you know, about training and why he thinks it's going to be dead and all that other stuff. So in quotes, he's saying, I'm going to go to the top, person in the organization. He says, next week, we will close the training department. We are shifting our focus from training to performance. I have no argument there, right? Any remaining training staff will become mentors, coaches, and facilitators who work on improving core business processes, strengthening relationships with customers, and cutting costs. That sounds good. I'm changing my title to from VP of Training to VP of Core Capabilities. My assistant will become the Director of Sales Readiness and the Director of Competitive Advantage, respectively. The measure of our contributions will be results, not training measures. I agree with that too. We're scrapping the LMS post-haste. I disagree with that. And wherever possible, we're replacing proprietary software with open source. And, that's fine too. I agree with all of that. So it's a real catchy title, The title of it is, Get Out of the Training Business. And my response to that is, hell no, get into the training business, okay? I agree, training is an activity, and what we really want is performance, isn't it? That is the result that we are looking for, and I would agree with that. But I also think there's a great myth out there, and sometimes we miss a huge part of the training picture, right? And I want to share that with you today about a thing that I think is missing. And some of you are involved in it. I know you're involved in it. I know at H&I you're involved in it. I know in ITA you guys are involved in it. There's a lot of people that think that training just deals with what I call the HR side, right? Which is performance and talent management. And there's a lot of press about that today. But there's a huge portion of the training business, because training is much broader than just HR in the organization, that looks at training other folks, right? Like customers and channel partners and other folks that could impact your business. And that's what we call extended enterprise training. And I will submit to you that probably more money is spent on that in many organizations that's spent on HR. Give you a case in point about all of that, okay? When I was at Massey Ferguson, while my title was training director, I had 55 trainers that reported to me, and I was responsible for training 900 dealer organizations throughout North America. They generated about $3 billion worth of sales, right? We had a big training center where we brought in combines and everything to do service training, sales training, product training, different kinds of things. And I reported to the vice president of marketing, right? There was this little thing called HR training. They had 2 trainers in there, and all I knew about them was I think they're supposed to keep us out of trouble somehow so we don't get sued, right? And so when I look at it, I would say this in response to Jay. Yes, you're right, Jay. I agree, performance is the key. I don't think we need to throw out the LMS and technology, because I think that's shortchanging some things. And while I believe this is evolving and changing, certainly our industry is evolving and changing. And thank God it is. It's about time, right? But the reality is there's a huge part out here that still needs training and development, still needs to track, still needs to do all the things, still needs to reach out to those folks out there. And the traditional, straight talent management performance stuff isn't going to just meet that need. So that's part of what I'm positing today. If I took an apple and sliced it in half, let's don't forget about this, because I'll be talking about it. If you're concerned about jobs and things like that, there may be some answers here for you, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So I wanted to then get into the next part that really talks about how do we bulletproof our jobs. Well, we know, I put the word help in there because there is no real way to bulletproof it, right? But here's what we can do based on my 30 years of experience, just a couple of ideas, I think, that I've seen happen when we did go through recessions and things in the past, and what helped secure, maybe not your job, but maybe your career a little bit more. Because you can't say that the company is always going to be able to do it, but if you want to strengthen your career, here's some things that I would basically recommend. Number 1, broaden the scope and the impact of the training that you're doing, of what you're doing today, right? So in other words, if I'm here and I'm just doing it in the HR talent area, is there another part of the organization that could use everything that we're doing, okay, but I could expand the scope of what I'm doing today? similar to what I talked about at Massey Ferguson. Let me give you an example right here. This is a site that we created several years ago for the state of New Jersey. And they came to us and said, look, we have some federal money, yippee, right? And we need to spend it or we're going to lose it. So we at GeoLearning wanted to help them not lose that money, right? See how civic-minded we are? We wanted to make sure that they didn't lose it. What they needed to do basically was to train first responders. These are the people, all right, that when something happens, they're the first ones on the site. It could be police, it could be emergency, people, it could be fire people, it could be anything. But they needed to be trained in case there was some kind of an attack or something happening. These are going to be the people who are going to be first on the site and the scene. And think about that. Let's say, heaven forbid, it was something serious like a chemical or nuclear or some kind of event. If you don't know what you're doing, could you do more harm than good if you showed up at that site? Exactly what they were thinking about here. So a very specific program. Train first responders in what to do, and secondly, we need to locate and find out where these folks are. Because we don't know if it happens in this part of New Jersey, who is qualified in that area to handle that kind of an event. So a very important program for the state of New Jersey, but very, very focused. One thing to deliver, but very important. Guy running this thing, his name was Dave Leonardis. Dave is a very smart man. He's also very good in the public sector because he saw an opportunity. In 2008, the state of New Jersey started to see its tax revenue decline. The projections were coming that, man, we're in for it, and especially in 2009, we're going to have a lot less money to work with. So he started to go around in the state and socialize this idea of saying, this system is working so well, why don't we consolidate all of the state agencies that may have homegrown learning management systems or other learning management systems into one, and let's go negotiate a deal with one of these vendors, and let's save money for the taxpayers of the state of New Jersey. They went out, they eliminated millions of dollars of cost. GeoLearning was fortunate enough to win that particular contract, or that expansion of that contract. And while Dave Leonardis was just the head of this, now he sits on the committee that runs the entire LMS program for the state of New Jersey, and they're rolling it out now, and they're saving millions of dollars. How about that for broadening the scope and expanding it? So here's a guy that came in one particular area, expanded the scope, sold it, and now sits on the committee that runs the whole darn thing and saved the taxpayers millions of dollars. That, to me, is a win-win story. That's how one way you can sit there and say, boom, I just took a bullet and it didn't go through, right? Here's another example. Cabela's. How many people know about Cabela's? Okay, big stores, beautiful. I think there's one up in Albert Lea. There's one in Kansas City, right? Beautiful store. If you've ever been in them, it's like a wonderland if you're like an outdoors person, right? You know how Cabela's started out? You know how they started out? Direct mail. They were huge catalog direct mail, right? And then a few years ago, they decided, because Bass Pro Shop and others were building these big mega stores, that they could do the same thing. Now, here's the interesting thing. Cabela's University started in 1961, many, many years ago. Todd, you worked on this, you're familiar with it, whatever. But basically what happened here is the head of this initiative for Cabela's University saw an opportunity. As we go out and open these mega stores, guess how many people we have to hire at each store? 500 per store, 500. So, how are we going to find these people? Are these people going to be competent to do the job? How are we going to get them up to speed fast enough so when we open those doors, okay, and people flood into the mega store, they're not going to be dealing with people who don't know their stuff, who don't know about the guns or the fishing rods or the boats or everything else. So it's a huge task. And so she positioned this particular system to be a part of that entire store launch, okay? And then last year, the CEO, it's a public company, in their annual report, wrote about how successful that particular program with Cabela's University using that LMS technology was in their rollout